Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ideas Sin. I'm really excited to introduce to you today James Hamet. So I met James, when was it, like 2020? During COVID?
Yeah. In the middle of everyone becoming online.
Yeah, this was like end of COVID, or no, end of the year too, probably.
It was right as COVID was starting to create lockdowns.
Mm, yeah,
So when it was, I mean, specifically around the time when the schools started having remote classrooms.
yeah. And so I know I believe we connected through LinkedIn or somebody else had put us in contact. I'm not really sure, but I remember I was looking up like social entrepreneurship, and I think that's how we connected initially, was just like, hey, like you're into this stuff and I wanted to learn more about it. So I reached out to you to ask some questions, and then I learned that you had put together a nonprofit called Lit.
And we got to sort of build it together, which was fun.
Yeah. And so Lit was really about trying to bring and feel free to correct me and then, specify it in any other way that you like, but it was us really working to bring different types of individuals from varying industries and present these professionals to young kids and adults to show them all the different avenues and professions that they can get into, not just like the traditional, hey, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer. It's like, hey, yeah, let's bring in all these different types of speakers and try to inspire these kids. But did I hit the nail on the head, or anything else you
Yeah,
want to
I
add to
mean,
that or clarify?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're somebody who's knowledgeable in cognitive psychology and in the different ways that people think and how that affects their behavior and their mindset, and it's something that you and I share. When I was a kid, I remember taking the train to go to school, and it's such a minor thing, factually, right? There's so many different ways to get to school, but taking the train, what it did for me is and it affects everyone differently, is it had me sit next to adults while I was going to school. So I would take a seat. At first I was shy, but I very quickly got the confidence to say hi to people. And on the train, even as adults, I think that that's sort of a hard thing to do, right? To start a conversation with a stranger. But I started doing it. And it was because I was a curious kid and I wanted to learn what people were doing. And what was interesting for me to see is that as my curiosity grew, my performance in school improved. And not just my performance, but my general happiness, right? I had a better idea of what I could do in life, which is always helpful. I could also start to find what I would call relatable role models. And that for me was very grounding. Growing up, you hear about Nikola Tesla and Elon Musk, and we always have these different people that society and sometimes our parents, encourage us to emulate. And when you have that ability to start finding your own role models, even within your network, right? I think, for example, when you're friends with somebody, part of that is because there's something about that person that you have huge respect for and that you want to learn from. Um, I think that then you realize that, okay, you can create your own life. You don't have to follow a blueprint because there is no blueprint. And you can also use that to help others. And so that was, I think you and I both see that, and I think that's what really brought us together and realized that we could learn from each other and to help society.
Mhm.
I remember when we were working on lit conversations together, we were thinking about the same thing of how can we help kids, especially when you have COVID that is a complete disruptor to their education. How do kids form social bonds when they can't communicate in person? They don't know how to use LinkedIn. Maybe they have social media, but they don't have. For us, it's we know what this is, right? Like this is a poor alternative to being in person,
Yeah.
right? But for a kid who's being introduced to like this way, imagine meeting people only virtually and not in person. It's a different experience.
Yeah. It definitely is. And so, I mean, you've worked in creating different kinds of companies, and you've also just dived into just doing these things. I mean, you didn't have to create a nonprofit. You could have done a bunch of other different things, but what really drove you to want to create like conversations? What was that kind of spark that you were like, yeah, I just need to do this?
Yeah, it's hard to give you the most truthful answer, just because we are emotional beings, and ultimately, I think that what drives me is the ability to help others. When I realized that kids, for example, were more isolated now than they were before, right? Like I remember reading a newspaper article saying, kids are now learning school remotely. I remember trying to empathize with that and put myself in the shoes of the school child who's now still struggling with social dynamics. Right? Maybe they have acne. I mean, I remember having social issues, social anxiety in school, and it's just yeah, like you feel like people don't like you. You feel like you're always doing the wrong thing. Like, how do you survive in that environment? And so I thought, wow, these schools need more help. I remember calling the schools and asking if I could, fundraise for them or give some money or something. And the irony for me was when the school said no. They said, look, we don't need that type of support. What we need is time with kids because they feel isolated. And that was what inspired me. I didn't have a grand vision. I didn't plan to start a charity. I just had a dream one night of, being able to give back. And I think that everybody has that type of dream. And I felt urged to give a phone call. And after that phone call, everything happened automatically. The school asked me, "Hey, can you come talk to some kids?" I said yes. And then that happened a couple times, and I kept saying yes. And at some point, I thought, well, maybe this could be more impactful if they're not just learning from me, if they're learning from other people. And at the same time, I can't give 24 hours of my day. If we do this as a team, maybe we can create something that's really useful to these kids in these classrooms. And so anyway, that's what happened there. But yeah, to go back to the high level, I think that I'm just motivated to help when I see an option or an opportunity to help. I'm not necessarily motivated by the end result, and I think that in some ways has limited my success. But I also think that I'm living a limited, a temporary life on Earth that I share with 7 billion people, and I could see myself living their life, and I hope that my interaction with them added something positive to their experience here. So that's what motivates me. It's the ability to help, even if I'm not sure that I will be successful with that.
There's a lot of courage behind taking those steps too, because I feel like a lot of people get that little like switch that comes on and they're like, "Oh, I should do this." But maybe not. Maybe later. Maybe I won't do it. And it takes courage to take those initial steps. Especially when you don't know what the outcome is, whether it will lead to success or not, or maybe the vision that you had
Yeah, I
gets
mean, in
altered.
human psychology, we are so afraid of risk that we will even avoid easy wins, right? Like being nice to someone, smiling, giving a compliment. They're very easy to do, but the consequence, like the 1 out of 10 bad experiences, um, can be so polarizing for your worldview that you have one negative experience and you're like, okay, that's it, I'm not going to try. You try to build one company and it fails, and then you say, okay, that's it, I'm not going to try, I'm done. And you see that repeated, and it's because we're creatures of habit. Our brains are always trying to learn, and that's what they do. That's all that they do, they just learn. And I think that we try to learn from our mistakes, which is useful in a survival mode. But in a society, the outcome is, you get one bad experience and then maybe you drop the pattern and you stop, trying in that way. So, I think what worked for me is recognizing that that's what these are, that they're patterns, and recognizing statistics, right? Yes, there's a chance of failure, and yes, it's probably a high likelihood, but you will always learn, and learning itself creates leverage because now you can take that learning, you can apply it to your next challenge. And statistically, if you fail, well, try again because your odds improve. It's kind of like gambler's logic, right? Like if you roll the dice 10 times and the first like 9 times you didn't get a six, well, the 10th time you really should get a six. Your odds are not necessarily improved, right? Like I think that this was demonstrated many times that your odds are still 1 out of 6 when you make that roll. But once again, when you look at a volume, when you look at the number of iterations, it does follow a Bayesian distribution, assuming these aren't trick dice.
Yeah, a little
You
weighted
should still
dice.
have a bell curve, right? And so, as long as you are tracking your progress, you'll see that really, your success is this bumpy line, and you don't want to get stuck in a local minima because the local minima could take place right before a huge spike.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, especially in a time period where we're so addicted to social media, we get addicted to the local minima. We get scared. We think that there's a chance of falling lower. We don't want to be in that situation. So I think that with our program, what we did is we showed students that you can try and fail a number of times. What we tried to expose kids to role models who are outside of the norm,
Mhm.
right? Minority role models, people who had jobs that you wouldn't necessarily think exist. We also showed people who were able to combine roles, right? How do you go from being an athlete to a doctor? Well, surprisingly, there's some overlap.
Mhm.
And so those are some pretty powerful things. And I have to say, I'm talking a lot about my charity right now, and that wasn't the plan.
No, this is
But
great.
you asked me what motivates me and what gets me to say yes to big things, and that was part of the purpose of the charity, was to teach that skill.
No, I think that is it's a part of your story. It's a part of what makes you a creator because you are a creator. You've created like different companies, but you also love to build things and you love art and you love music and that is the creator mentality. And so it's really important to understand that you can apply that mentality to a lot of different areas and different industries
Mm.
and it's really
Any
the same
direction.
process. It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
and any direction requires creativity.
Mhm.
You can't show me a problem that doesn't have at least some degree of creativity, even the most basic.
Mhm. And so what was your background in school again? Was it engineering?
Yeah, yeah. I'm an electrical engineer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I loved art class, and I actually applied to school to college as a music student
Oh, okay.
for an engineering degree. But I submitted like recordings of myself playing the violin.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
that's
in college I did
interesting.
I did a lot of sculpture work as well.
Oh. Yeah, that is really interesting because I knew that I think at the time that like we were working on lit, you were learning how to play piano at some point. And
Yeah, yeah, that was my COVID hobby.
yeah, you were learning to play piano. And yeah, a few of us were like, yeah, we're all trying to learn how to play instruments. And we all got together and would just do like, yeah, listen to each other play, which was really
Yeah,
great. But I didn't know that you went into school initially for art. And then, you ended up getting your degrees in electrical engineering. Like somebody who hears that is like, whoa, those are like two completely opposite spectrums. So, how has that
yeah.
kind of influenced you? Like, how has art potentially influenced the way that you view things in that electrical engineering like world of yours?
Yeah, so I definitely have maybe like a atypical view of the world and what brings me happiness. But first of all, I do get frustrated like anybody else, but I have a ability to look past that in my mind. You know, people in general don't like math classes. And there were definitely engineering classes that I absolutely hated. But that said, learning is learning, and it's really just a series of trial and error. So I believe that anyone can learn anything, and I have tested myself on a number of challenges. Right, learning piano was actually part of me proving to myself that look, I can pick up a new instrument whenever I want to. I taught myself some languages after college, including Russian, which I'm now converting into Ukrainian because of the geopolitical environment.
Yeah.
Um, they're close enough though, so
Okay.
I actually my Ukrainian is pretty good now. And so, I think anyone can learn anything. And I was thinking, well, how do I use creativity to solve world problems? And, I think that it would be naive of me to say that, like art painting in general doesn't solve world problems, because I actually think, the right artwork in front of the right person can make a huge difference. But, where am I coming from? My parents are doctors. My uncle was an electrical engineer, and they had always suggested to him that maybe he make medical devices. And it's not something that I really thought about as a kid, because I actually didn't even hear a lot of these stories until I was an adult. But it's clear to see that subconsciously we're always communicating with one another. My parents subconsciously were always pushing me towards medicine, and my uncle was always pushing me towards engineering. And maybe together they were always pushing me towards medicine, medical devices. So I just naturally kind of fell into that direction of, okay, here's a technology that I feel like I understand. I know people who know this technology. Um, I have people I can ask questions to about this. I already know the vocabulary pretty well. It's easy to make friends in this space because they basically act like people I know, right? So it's really funny to see these patterns in society, right, where we copy each other's behaviors, and you can fall into a group, and then you're the average of the five people you know the best, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was a bit subconscious. But moving past that, I don't think that I'm a typical, math geek. I can do some crazy things. I can estimate populations in countries pretty accurately. Um, that's a fun game I
I was
play.
gonna say,
But
yeah, you can explain that a little
yeah,
later. That'd be cool to like hear how you do that, but
yeah. Well, the thing is that like, what do I like the best? And when I was a kid, in elementary school, I liked making games.
Hmm.
My first business, my first, attempt at creativity was making games. I have two little sisters, and at some point you get tired of, losing a game to your big brother. So, I would create AIs that would play these games with me and they wouldn't get upset. So I would play computer games that I made myself. I would literally just find a board game and then copy over the instructions into computer code and then play it with myself. And so what that taught me is how to connect the dots. How do you take something that's been prototyped and turn it into something that can be done repeatedly? And when I look at businesses, it's the same thing. How do you create a pilot project? Like how do you create a case study, a first version of something that helps one person, and then how do you scale that? So that's always been my favorite. I love talking to universities, professors, teachers, students, learning what they're working on, and then seeing if there's a way for me to connect the dots to bring it all the way to the market. There are a lot of dots that you don't see at the beginning that you either have to connect or you have to circumvent later down the road. That's the process of trial and error, right? You discover the things that are important that you overlooked, and you discover the things that are shortcuts that you may have missed. And I think that's the learning here. But it's all creativity and it's all helping people, and that's what motivates me the best. You help one person, and then you try to help more people the same way. And what's beautiful about it is it's not always easy to help somebody. You can give someone a compliment, make them smile. Sometimes it's not that easy, right? If somebody has Alzheimer's disease, um, it's a little harder to make that type of person smile. If their parents have Alzheimer's, it's harder to make that person ignore their reality, right?
Yeah.
But if I can solve a problem in that space in dementia, and that's one of the things I'm working on now, then maybe I can make that person smile, or at least smile more. Maybe not throughout the day, but for more days, right? If I can, I think that the thing that would make me the happiest is if I could use creativity to help people live longer.
Hmm. And
And it's not just length of time for me; quality is important too.
yeah, quality of life is extremely important. I mean, in my field of work with clinical research, that's one of the things we're always trying to measure is quality of life. And some people would
Hmm.
say, I'd rather have a shorter lifespan but have a high quality of life than a longer lifespan and have a shittier quality of life. And I think a lot of people would feel that way. I wouldn't want to be miserable and live until like 150. In that entire time, I'd rather like live fully and have a shorter life. But I mean, my another question I have for you is, did you know about social entrepreneurship before you got into it, or was that something that you were like, "Oh, that's what I'm doing?" Like,
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, I definitely am a tech entrepreneur.
mhm.
Um, I one of my superpowers is programming. I don't know why. Probably it's because I started so early, but I can create full products in a day,
Mm.
and it's really crazy to hear that. It's very bold of me to say that. It definitely depends on the product, but I have that ability. For me, programming is just like another language. And I also, when I was a kid, kids are so creative; they have so much time on their hands. Like I learned all the shortcuts. I've created at this point so many products that I can just almost copy paste some of my own code. A lot of programmers today, they go online and they look for other people who have done like a similar project and they copy that code, right? That's
Oh,
if
I
you
don't
ask a
know.
software engineer what they do, most of them will say that. Well, in my case, I copy my own code because I've done almost almost everything. I mean, that's a bold statement, but you'd be surprised of the things that I've like already tried to do. I mean, it's all over the place. Um, but anyway, I guess what I'm saying with that is, what was the question again?
Oh, I had it.
Remind
Oh,
me.
I was like, what was the question? Did you know you were getting into social entrepreneurship? Like,
Oh,
did you
right.
know
It
it
was social
before it
entrepreneurship.
or after the fact?
Yeah, so I was diving into that angle to say that no, I did not know social entrepreneurship. I had no idea what I was doing. Starting a charity was okay. So coming out of the tech world, right? Like in an environment where you're building products and you're selling products, it's usually about the money, right? And I approached this problem the same way. I asked the schools, is this a money problem? Do you need money? Like, what is the thing? Um, what I realized is that doing a social entrepreneurship, doing a social business, had so many lessons to teach me that I needed to learn. It's not all about money, and I already knew that. I already knew it wasn't all about money because I'm in medicine, right? Um, but at the same time, I think that you learn new skills with social entrepreneurship. You have to learn how to work with others where there's no money involved.
Mhm.
How do you work with a team that is completely volunteer, right? How do you work with a team that has no sense of equity? Nonprofits don't have any equity. There's no dividend. There's no ownership. The agreements are in some ways more complex as a result of that, but also in a way they're easier, right? Because you don't have like these crazy hard commitments of payroll, and then if you don't pay it,
Yeah.
you're screwed. Obviously, a lot of nonprofits do have payroll, but all that I'm saying is you learn to have a different sense of priorities. And I thought, wow, here is a big challenge that's hitting society. I'm somebody who's done pretty well. What if I do something that is more along the lines of giving back and only giving back? And I made some really great friends that way. I also, we impacted over 1,000 kids. So we had like I could die tomorrow and know that at least I've made the world a better place. That feels good. But I also learned some really key interpersonal skills. Um, so no, I had no idea what I was doing, and I just got into it. And I thought that as long as my heart is in the right place, we will succeed. And that's the same opinion I've always taken to any new thing that I've tried. Like learning piano, I picked. I don't know if you know Marika Takayushi.
Mm-mm.
Does that name
No, I
ring a
don't
bell
know.
to you? Yeah, probably not to most listeners either. She's a modern pianist and she's phenomenal. Okay, she writes this. She composes music that is just beautiful, and it's on Spotify. And I'm a huge fan. And her work is similar to Ludovico
Oh,
Einaudi.
I know that
That's a
one.
more common
I was
name.
just listening to him
Yeah.
yesterday.
So
Love
yeah,
it.
like it just really gets your brain going. Whenever I'm doing a really hard project, like these are my go-tos. And so I picked one of her songs to be my first song on the piano. And this is
Wow.
knowing absolutely no piano, right? I had an advantage because I've played instruments before, but a violin and a piano, the only thing they have in common is technically they're both string instruments, but that's sort of where it ends. You don't even sit down for the violin, and you sit down for the piano. So like I had to learn like how to sit and move my hands, and I'm playing this complex piece of music, and it took me maybe 6 months, which in retrospect is probably not a lot of time, but it was 6 months of just pain.
Pain.
Like I'm seeing music that is like all these notes next to each other, and I can't even read the music. So I'm googling, like scales, and I'm taking a pencil and I'm writing down each note, and I made little stickers and I put them on each part of my piano,
Yeah.
and you go through this process of being frustrated, of knowing what you want and not having it, and doing that for such a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference between month 1 and month 6 was huge. The difference between month 1 and month 2 was also just huge. I couldn't even play one line of that sheet music in the first month. I couldn't play one line. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is that um, the only thing that kept me going through that process was knowing that that is the process. There's a really great book called The Obstacle is the Way, and I read that book and it changed my life. And what it says basically is that there are no shortcuts. Not in the sense that shortcuts don't exist, because you can get lucky and you can find them, but there are no shortcuts in the framework of you know what to do next, right? Like if you're unlucky and there's a shortcut but you don't know about it, right? Then technically the shortcut doesn't exist because you don't have access to it. So if the next fastest way for you to get something done is to climb this huge mountain, and it's really hard to do, but that's like the next thing that your brain thinks of as the best possible way, a lot of people, they will spin their wheels thinking of alternatives. Can I go around the mountain? Can I go through the mountain? Can I fly over it? Right? Like there are different ways. But we end up losing a lot of time that way, and it's much better to just attack the mountain. If this is my obstacle, then I have to overcome it, no matter the cost. Um, I think that that's a useful skill to have in all aspects of life, because sometimes you have to climb that mountain and there are no shortcuts, even if you search and search and search. And I think the worst part is that that is the most common situation, that we're just afraid of something, and the fear is the mountain. It's not even pain, it's just fear for the most part. And we end up dragging our feet because we're climbing that mountain while looking for a shortcut. And you're going to climb the mountain slowly in that case. It's better to just brace for it, go. And once you climb that mountain, you realize, you know what, it wasn't even that tall. You can probably relate to this, right? Like, don't you feel like when you encounter something difficult in your life and it's so difficult, you're like, oh, it can't possibly be harder. Like, this is the worst part.
Yeah, and then it's
And
like
then you encounter something even more serious,
yeah.
right? All of life is like that. I would rather climb my mountains and get comfortable with them than, be afraid knowing that, you know what, like in 10 years, this is going to be a small mountain for me. And I'm going to be really sad that I didn't just, you know, put in the work.
Yeah. And it's true. It's the more often that you just put your head down and just like do it, and not literally put your head down, but like the more often you just stick to doing what it is that you're planning on doing, yeah, you might look around, and I feel like some people will look around to see what others are doing, but not in the sense of, oh, I'm looking to get answers and inspiration. A lot of times people get into comparator mode and they're like, oh, well, is this person doing this and this person doing that? And it's like, you need to
Yeah,
just
comparator mode
focus
is
on you.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Comparator mode is very dangerous. It doesn't give you success. All that comparator mode gives you is safety, potentially, right? It's like being a fish in one of those big schools of fish. And then when the shark comes by and takes a bite, statistically you're safe, right?
That's
Like
right.
that's comparator mode. Eventually you get eaten. They don't have long lifespans, those fish. If you want to survive and thrive, you have to do some crazy things. I think that being unique is the single greatest uh, part of being alive. First of all, and I think that it's also the single greatest way to provide value to society. You know, it's so important to think in different directions. Everything that has ever been discovered is thanks to somebody who's placed one foot in one space that hasn't been stepped on before.
Yeah. Have you ever felt unique compared to maybe when you were in school? You were like, man, I feel unique, like you feel different compared to others. And did that ever bother you?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things that helps me is to also think that everybody, like ingrained in my mind, that everybody is unique. Uh, I would say that everybody is unique, hands down. To me, that's a fact. If you look deep enough at any one person and any one thing, right? Even grains of sand, you could say are unique. I know that snowflakes. They've finally proven that okay, fine, they're not perfectly unique, right? Like there are other snowflakes that look the same, but I would still describe those as unique snowflakes, just because the way that they drift down from the sky. Technically, that's data, right? That's an experience. That's a form of uniqueness. I think that you can't just look at the geometric shape of the snowflake and say, okay, well, they look the same, so therefore they're the same. That doesn't talk anything about the composition necessarily either. Of course, the amount of dust in the snowflake has a factor on the geometry, so maybe not that factor, but there are so many things that we don't know, right? We're always discovering more things about the world. I highly doubt that two snowflakes that look the same are exactly the same. So I just want to point that out. Maybe it's on a molecular scale that they're different, but that's a difference. So as a kid, I always thought in the concept of time. I'm here on Earth. I've been around for X number of seconds, X number of minutes, X number of years. Time is attention, and the people who at least are my age, they've had the same number of seconds as I have to be alive. So it's very hard to make that comparison. Every second that I've experienced, they've experienced a fundamentally different second of time. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I've realized I'm different from others, probably in a more substantial way, just in the sense of I I don't like to conform. I'm bad at it, and I think part of me going down this direction is that I've been frustrated with how bad I am at conforming. But I think part of that also has been to my advantage, because I've had this wake up call of you don't have to conform. Do you know how hard it is to conform? Like looking back at that,
It's
in
terrible.
order to conform, well, besides the emotional aspect, which everyone for the most part is aware of, right? Besides the challenge of feeling let down, like, oh yeah, like I don't look as good, or I'm not as smart, or whatever story you're comparing yourself. I'm not wearing the right jeans. I don't have the right iPhone. All these things. Um, also consider attention, right? If you've been around for, 3 trillion seconds, I don't know how many years that is, but we'll go with something. And you spend 80% of those seconds looking at what other people do so that you can copy them. How much of that time is spent becoming who you are, copying them, versus observation, right? You spend so much energy that gets lost just by trying to see what other people are doing and to find the pattern. When instead you could look at yourself, look at what makes you happy, look at what makes you move, look at what makes you curious and driven, and learn from yourself. And then, the ROI on that time is so much better because now every one of those seconds is actionable. You're not looking for, a pattern that might not necessarily hold, right? If you look at other people's patterns, at some point maybe they conflict, right? Like, I identify as a man, so I emulate probably a lot of like masculine things, but I also have role models who are women, and there's a lot that I like to learn from that, and sometimes they conflict, and you can't be two people, And I think for me, that's the biggest frustration in life, that you do have to sort of make decisions, and they seem small, but they're there. How do you talk? What do you wear? What do you like? I mean, there are all these questions, and at some point you have conflicts. One of my sisters likes spicy food and the other one doesn't. What's the right answer? It doesn't make sense to spend time thinking about who's right, because ultimately, they're smarter than I am, in the sense of, what? I'm just going to make this decision for me. I'm going to see what foods I like. I'm going to see my experience of that food. And each data point is always going to have value because it's always relevant and it's not contradictory. So that's just my answer there. I definitely seem nerdy probably with that answer.
No, it's all good. And actually, I was going to say, I'm not sure if it's still safe of me to assume or even say, but how has spirituality really impacted your viewpoint on things, especially because you do still have that scientific mindset? Has that ever come to like disagreements within yourself or
Ooh,
viewpoints?
that's a good question. You know, if we go into the direction of like, religion and philosophy, um, I'm very spiritual, um, but I don't consider myself religious. I I believe in a type of reality that accepts all perspectives. If I were to take the furthest step back at what I truly believe in, it's that we are each our own versions of the universe, and I believe in multiverse theory, so I believe that there are also infinite versions of each individual that I can observe. So, there are like infinite versions of you, Denise, and you are fundamentally unique from everybody. And I think, honestly, in the concept of time and perspective,
Mhm.
I really do believe that, your perspective of me is a fundamentally different universe than my perspective of you. It's not the same universe. They're fundamentally different. And the nice and beautiful part of life is that our universes do overlap, right? Even though they're fundamentally separate, they're not fundamentally independent, right? And so we can influence each other and communicate. But I guess what that says is that you can time travel. And I'm going to say that, and it's going to sound bold, but you can time travel in one sense. If there are infinite versions of you, right? Infinite versions of reality, then you have the ability to decide which version of that reality you live in. Now, maybe I can't live in a version of reality where I'm, 8 feet tall. Maybe I don't want to, but I can live in a version of reality where, at least like I'm friends with certain people. I like certain foods. Those ones are easy. But like, let's take, for example, career, right? You can choose to live in a reality where you are your best self and you've succeeded at these XYZ things. And the way to do it is just imagine you're there and look back. What did it take? I mean, what do teachers and parents always say? When they recommend role models, they're recommending role models so you can see sort of the steps going up in that direction. The challenge with role models is that that person's not you, right? So you can't ever really become that person. But if you are able to see a future version of yourself as a role model, suddenly now it's a lot easier to make that happen because that version of you has all of your limitations, right? All of your challenges, all of your past experiences, and still manage to overcome, whatever barriers were there. That's how you find your mountains, and that's how you climb them. So I think that spirituality for me, it's made me a very tolerant and accepting person. I'm able to be friends with people who maybe are, you would say, not the most friendly people. That's had some consequences, of course, but it's also allowed me to expand my mind in ways that I can learn incredibly fast. I can adapt incredibly fast, and I enjoy the process. So, if anything, spirituality has allowed me to conquer fear. And when I say conquer fear, I don't mean that I don't feel it. I do feel fear, but I'm addicted to it. I love my fear. I know that Will Smith is not someone that we all necessarily respect these days, but he said something powerful that still sticks with me today, which is that when he was afraid of something, he knew that deep down it meant that it was something that he needed to take action on. You know,
Mhm.
and that was powerful for me because it's true. The things that we're afraid of, sometimes they lead to what we want. Sometimes we're afraid of what we want, and it's a very hard thing for me to just say that statement and let anyone who's listening to this process that. But if you think about it, um, you will find that there is an angle where you are afraid of what you want. You're afraid of the embarrassment of wanting it. You're afraid of wanting something for yourself, finding out that you can't get it, and then having that dream basically turn into a nightmare. We're all afraid of that. The truth is, though, that unless you take that decision of wanting that dream to come true, you don't give yourself that opportunity. And if you believe in that dream and you chase your fears and you overcome them, well, guess what? Those fears are the things that are blocking you. And when you overcome them, you actually do succeed. You might not land in the situation that you predicted, but that doesn't mean that you won't be in a happy place where you feel like, you know what, I actually did this. There is always a finish line. And you can move that finish line. You'd be surprised. This is one of the things we do a lot at the charity, right? Where we teach kids that, all because you're studying to be a doctor doesn't mean that that's what you have to do.
Mhm.
You could actually maybe find success becoming a movie director, but thanks to your medical school, right, you become a really good actor for medical roles, right? I mean, it's really ridiculous, but that is how society works. You need to align yourself with these things that you're afraid of, because even if they are not going to happen the way that you think they will, overcoming those fears is overcoming the only barriers to getting there or a better place.
Yeah. That's something that I've always felt as well. Anytime that something would come up and I'm scared of it, I'm like, oh shit, I have to do this now. It's just like it registers in my head as, okay, yeah, this is something that I'm scared of doing, but I know that I have to do it. I know that I have to push through it. And again, it's learning about the process, learning to accept, okay, this is going to be part of that process where I'm uncomfortable, where I'm stumbling about, where I'm still just trying to get my head wrapped around, the terminology
Hmm.
or just understanding my body and how it reacts to certain things. But it is really it's really nice to go through that because you build that resiliency and you're able to overcome things a lot easier in other ways. And I've done so many random things that I find that, oh, yeah, this skill has actually helped me in this completely different and irrelevant area. So, again, to your point about, like, yeah, you could go to medical school and then become an actor in some way. And it's like, I've done like yoga and it's complemented rock climbing, or pole fitness, and the same thing. It's complemented rock climbing,
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
it's,
and it's not about like making it halfway there, right? It's not, maybe my example is not the best one. It's really about how it's about leverage, right? If we point to like a very big role model, and every single person who's successful has an example like this. If you point to like Steve Jobs, for example, one of the reasons the Apple computer was so successful is because he was someone who was passionate about calligraphy. And he took a calligraphy class and he learned calligraphy at a time when computers only had, I think, two fonts. And he created a computer that had, I think it was 20 or 30. And that was a huge differentiator. At the time, it essentially was either a black and white screen with text that looks like it's a calculator, or you have this beautiful, text that looks like it's coming from a book. People like books. People read books. Books don't have calculator text in them, and it was thanks to this insight that he only had by pursuing his creativity that he was able to come up with this. I forget this person's name, but one of my friends and advisors and mentors early on in my career. Once again, I wish I remembered, but I've had so many mentors at this point. He told me that to be an entrepreneur is to be human, because you can't think like a robot. You need this creativity. You need to find these little areas of passion, because ultimately that's how you connect with people. And business is all about connecting with people. You can create a faster calculator, but that doesn't mean people will buy it. I used to think about the concept of teleportation. I thought that would be cool if I could invent that. That's an example of a really crazy idea that I wish I had more confidence to pursue. But I just see that one as a little tricky to do in our lifetime. But I'm thinking about that, and even if you made it, you'd still have to figure out how to sell it. And selling it is not going to be, hey, look, free transportation. I promise you, that's not going to be enough, because people are going to think, well, what's the cost? Is it scary, right? You're going to get people who are not going to do it because it's scary to them. So how do you find a story you can tell of it maybe saving someone's life, or improving their life in a meaningful way? And you can only really do that if you stop and smell the roses.
and so how has storytelling affected the way that you run businesses?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that storytelling is the essence of business. And one of the skills that I had to learn, and I'm still learning it, is telling a different story to different people. Um, it's the reason that you have to do that, and you can't just have one story, is because you need to know your audience, right? The person needs to be able to understand what you're saying. You need to be efficient and concise with your words so that you're not just droning. And I hope I'm not doing that on this call.
No, you're doing it.
um, but Mark Twain said it best. He said, "I'm sorry I didn't have time to write a shorter letter," and it was like a super long letter, right? That is the consequence of the consequence. Sorry, the long letter is bad storytelling. That's what I'm trying to say here. And so when I'm saying that you have to tell a different story to different people, you have to take your long letter, which is the truth, right? Your information, and you have to turn it into little tiny chunks for the right person, right? They need to understand what's relevant to their interests. They need to understand what's relevant to their concerns, and pretty much only that, right? And you have to make sure that you communicate in the right way so that there aren't, unexpected surprises, right? Surprises can ruin relationships, especially if they're negative surprises. So you have to anticipate those things. You also have to make sure that what you're saying is interesting and motivating. If people don't feel a connection with you as a person, if they don't feel like they're learning, and learning, that's a key word, then they're going to zone out and they're not going to find it interesting. So ironically, I find myself, I used to be a good storyteller. I would tell stories by the campfire. I have two little sisters. I started with ghost stories. It's fun to tell scary stories. um, but I started telling, different types of stories as I grew up. And it's the most important part of the job. You know, each employee on your team, each partner outside of your team, each investor, advisor, friend, you have to tell them the right story. And it's very challenging for me because I'm more of a tech person. So for me, it's like, well, here's my white paper, here's all my facts. Find out what's interesting to you. And not everybody is like that. Most people are not like that. So I'm finding myself having to really practice my storytelling skills now more than ever before. So storytelling, I'd say, is definitely the most important, especially when you think about, and here's something to make sure that this is of good value of people's time. Uh, Here's something about psychology, right? Storytelling is all about emotion. Humans, we like to think that we're conscious beings, and maybe we are, but we also are driven by unconscious behavior. And you hear certain words, they make you feel different emotions. And that's important. That's really important because what you say to somebody can influence what they do. And it's hard to. So one of the things that I battle with, right, is walking this line of telling a different story to different people, keeping that story consistent somehow, and not in conflict. You wouldn't want to tell someone something that is completely like in disagreement with what you told somebody else, right? Like it has to be coherent. It has to be the same consistent story. So you have to walk that line. And then another line you have to walk is, not manipulating people. And that's a very tough one. As you learn more about psychology, you learn more about what makes people tick. And I think that's another reason why being an entrepreneur is about being human. It's about stopping and smelling the roses. It's about knowing that you live in this world. I think a lot of people see through, BS. I think that if you're trying to manipulate people, I think you get caught right away. I think that as humans, we have like a sixth sense for telling these types of things. People may get deceived a couple times, but you can't fool the world. It's the same concept of the bell curve. So I think that it's important to stay honest, basically. And being honest sometimes is hard, especially in storytelling. And so I find myself really practicing my storytelling ability almost on a daily basis. How do I incorporate new facts of my business and my life into how I tell stories and make sure that it's consistent, honest, and meaningful.
And as an avid learner, how do you incorporate balance into your life? Because you're doing a lot of different things, working a lot of different projects. So it's like, how do you find that balance to breathe?
That's a hard one. I've done better at that in the past than I'm doing now, to tell you the truth. Um, I would say that it definitely depends on your priorities. Um, but maybe the answer is your priorities. Warren Buffett is, he's not one of my favorite role models either. You always have an issue with all your role models, right? Like no one's perfect. But he said something that really connected with me. And what he said was, and it's something you can see online. There's really nice op-eds about it. He said, actually, I'm gonna do some storytelling here because there is a story behind it. He was flying on a private jet. Okay, I mean, very rich person flying on a private jet, and he talks to his pilot. His pilot comes back. I think while they're in the air and like a co-pilot is flying or something, And the pilot says, "Hey, Warren, I really want to be like you. I want to go into investing. I want to make all this money, blah, blah, blah. By the way, if you go into things for money, you're going to fail. Just FYI, it's not motivating enough. Find the emotional reason." But anyway, then Warren Buffett said, "Okay, well, tell me like the 20 things that you want in your life, right?" And the person lists 20 things. And then Warren Buffett said, "Okay, now I want you to tell me what the top five are." The person says the top five. And then Warren Buffett says, "Okay, the other 15, never do. Never do, don't touch, don't think about. They are distractions." And it's hard for me to balance as somebody who is, very creative and loves to do lots of things, different instruments and art and business. But ultimately, the answer here is that you only have 24 hours in the day. You don't have enough time on earth to do all of your passions. It's better to just focus on your top five. And that's why I'm also saying that, don't do anything for money, because money doesn't belong in your top five.
Because when you're doing something that you love or are passionate about, money is just going to come to you. Is that the assumption?
You have to operate that way. You really do, because otherwise you're going to die with money and none of your dreams. And I know that there are some sayings out there where people are like, "Well, I'd rather cry in a Ferrari." Okay, you're not in that situation though. It sounds nice, but if you put yourself in that situation, I guarantee you, there are going to be costs that you don't know you have to pay to get there. Um, it's hard to say like right now to that person, "Look, you're not going to be happy," and have them understand it, because once again, as humans, we're just so emotional. But if you already had the money, right? Let's imagine that scenario. Um, would you rather be able to have five, things that are important to you in your life, or four? Right? You may have to actually sacrifice something that you could love. Money comes and goes. We create it out of thin air all the time. It's really not important enough for somebody to make all of their decisions based on, you know? Like that's like saying I'm only going to work on sunny days, or I'm only going to be happy when it's sunny out. It's artificial limitations that just don't need to be there, because money does follow, and it follows people who don't do things for money, by the way. Because once again, people smell BS. If they feel like you're working with them for money, you're trying to get money from them, they're not going to work with you. People want to work with people who are passionate, and if you're passionate, you feel passion, you identify passion. um, you can call people on their bluff so easily. I think most of business is knowing who you can trust, and the way that you make that assessment is based on how human the person is.
Mhm. And so, what have been some of the activities or maybe experiences that you've had that really opened you up to understanding that point of being like, oh, humanity is really what's going to keep me stable in everything that I do?
Mm. Yeah, I don't think I necessarily had one experience that was like, aha,
Mhm.
I need to be human. um, I think it was, I mean, that question, right? Like, this feels like an experience that I constantly seek in life. You know, I'm somebody who always is stopping to smell the flowers, and always looking for. I mean, this is what brings me to art, right? To piano and painting and sculpture. Um, I mentioned sculpture, so
Mhm.
let's pick that one, because that's also a fun story. I used to do ice sculpting. That was my sculpture, right? I picked, and I can't tell you why because it was instinctual, but I picked to do ice, which is, by the way, temporary. Ice melts, just like life, just like everything that passes by. And I picked ice, and I had to experience this story of building something beautiful and then watching it melt away. so many times. And, at the first time it's hard, the second time it's hard. But you start to appreciate that life is just so, so temporary. And I said much earlier in today's interview, that I think a lot about time, and I really do. I love time. I have a sixth sense for knowing what time it is, even without a watch. It's pretty crazy. But, it's a beautiful thing. And every second, as I said before, is a unique second. I do not want to miss the story of my life. And, every little thing is a story. If I sit down, I pulled over on the highway once and just got out of my car and sat on the hood and just looked at the stars. Um, how many times have I done that in my life? I don't know, maybe a couple times. But if I hadn't done that, it wouldn't have happened, right? And every moment is just like that. You can romanticize it, you can give it value and emotional depth whenever you choose to. Even doing something mundane like washing the dishes. I remember washing the dishes as a kid and thinking about my parents and thinking about how happy that this would make them. And those are memories that I hope to never lose. And that's one of the reasons that I'm in neurology today. I mentioned my medical business. I build diagnostics for dementia. I hope that we can live in a world where everyone has their memories. I think that losing your memories is probably the single most unfortunate thing to happen to a person. It's like becoming paralyzed, and living in a wheelchair and you can't move the way that you used to. You lose a memory, you lose the ability to feel emotions that you used to have.
And so, how often are you riding the emotional wave in your life? Would you say you feel it pretty frequently?
Well, now I feel like you're my
No.
therapist.
No.
I thought we were friends.
No, we are friends. I'm this is like the wave that
No,
I'm
no, it's
always
okay.
riding,
It's a
so I
fun
love to just
question.
hear how
I'm
other
just
people are
poking you.
doing it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's ups and downs. Um, I mean, the thing is, though, one of the things that always helps me, even when I'm having a down period, is recognizing that I am living in the version of the universe that I want to live in, right? This is something that's hard to say because not everybody is going to agree with it. But everything that happens in our life is fundamentally accepted by us as people. We fundamentally accept our reality because otherwise we would change it, right? Now, I agree there are lots of things that can happen to a person that they might not, consent to, right? Consent is definitely a big topic that's worth exploring. And you could have a tragic thing happen in your life. Your parents could die. You could be orphaned. Did you consent to that? No. But fundamentally, it is a reality that you live in, and so you have to accept it. And I just think, because you have to accept it, the only choices that you really have are to deny it, which I don't think can add any value, or to accept it and figure out, what you can do to learn from that experience to make the world a better place that you can, enjoy. One of the ways I like to think about life is I'm an action movie star and I'm the director of my
Yeah.
life, and someone's got a camera somewhere and I don't know where they are, but they're following me all day. Um, what would I want that camera person to capture? And you can't be a perfect person, right? Like there are moments where I'm like, I wish I'd made a different decision. But at the same time, you think of yourself as this movie star. You are living your dream life. Anything that bothers you, you can choose to change. You can choose to think differently about it. You can choose to handle it differently. You can choose to move. One of my favorite quotes is, you know, you are not a tree. If you don't like where you are, move.
Yeah.
It's true. You might be frustrated and want something that you don't know how to get, and that might be frustrating. But move. Maybe there's a different framework in the universe somewhere out there for you, and you just have to put yourself in that spot. a lot of success is about being at the right place at the right time. It's not about working harder, right? Working harder is not a scalable thing. You can't scale your time. Like I said, it's finite. You have only so many seconds to be alive. There's actually a really cool medical theory that your heart only beats a fixed number of times and then you die. And that fixed number of times is set by your genetics. And that's why after exercising and your heart rate goes up, it then goes down throughout the rest of the day, and it extends your life because you have this fixed number. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying there is when you realize you have just a short amount of time, it's important to enjoy it. It's important to realize the beautiful thing that it is, that it's a story, and it's a unique story, and you're the only one actually who gets to see it, because there is no cameraman following me around. There's no cameraman following you around.
That I know of.
You are watching a TV show, an incredible movie, through the two best cameras available today in the world, which are your eyes. I wouldn't want to miss a second of it.
And so that's one of the things that you talked about, is you're living your dream life. So I dream a lot. I have a lot of vivid
Yeah, and once
dreams.
again,
Like,
it's not
huh?
perfect. I still have dreams and aspirations, and I get frustrated, but we're living in this fish tank, and you don't have control over everything. So,
Yeah.
sorry, Denise, your dreams?
Yeah. So going back, it's just, so I dream a lot, and I've had precognitive dreams as well. And so I'm actually
Mm,
interested to see if you have dreams. Do you remember your dreams? Have you ever gotten into lucid dreaming or have had precognitive
mm.
dreams? Has that ever happened for you?
Yeah, can you explain precognitive for a second?
So for me, I've had dreams that have happened in real life. It's like I've predicted certain things
Oh,
happening
yeah,
in
yeah,
real
yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I have that a lot.
Yeah.
I have a lot of precognitive dreams, and unfortunately, I sometimes base decisions on them.
Why?
Um,
Unfortunately.
well, it's not an exact science, right? Like it's very pseudo. Uh, are there times where, yeah, I have a dream, it guides my decision, and then it turns out just as I dreamed? Yes, and those experiences are very powerful and very rewarding. But I haven't dreamt of everything that I've experienced. So there's also a chance that my dream potentially guided me away from something that I want, right? Like, because your dream is, my understanding of dreams is your brain is thinking about things that you want and showing you ways to get it. It's kind of like a simulation, right? Like you're practicing before you try in real life. And I don't believe that dreams are interconnected with other humans. So like I could dream of our conversation, and I don't believe that that would change how you experience the conversation and therefore how you act. But yeah, no, I think that it's very powerful, and it's definitely moved my decisions. Um, since I see it as an exercise, I'm able to see how I would experience something. Sometimes it's something painful, right? Would I be able to handle a painful situation like one of my family members dying? Dreaming about somebody passing away and then having them pass away, that's not fun. But maybe that's a way of my spirit, of my brain, to prepare myself for that situation. And so, yeah, I mean, I do experience that a lot. I think that dreams are a beautiful thing. I haven't lucid dreamed. I've tried. Um, Whenever I dream, my experience is, and I don't know if this is common, but I feel like I have absolutely no control in my dreams, and it's just autopilot. I'm just looking through my eyes, and things are happening, and I have felt like desires in my dream. Like I know it's a dream. I want to do something, but my brain, body, and the world that I'm in is just going, and it's on its own schedule.
Mm.
And it's very annoying. It's like, oh, I want to turn left. I want to turn left. And my body's just moving. And I'm just
Oh,
like, damn it. Like,
interesting.
why?
Huh.
I don't know if everyone's like that, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's a very weird experience. I'd say that those are most of my
Do you
dreams.
dream in
And
color?
that's probably part of my bias, right? Because once again, I feel like my dreams are just exercises that my brain wants me to go through.
It's very possible.
It's like going to the gym. Like, all right, now you're going to experience this moment with this trauma and this high, and you'll be ready for it, even though it's unlikely to happen. You always have like these dreams that are like completely crazy. I remember this dream where I'm walking down a hallway and I'm going through rooms, and each room is like a galaxy. Like from like a movie. You open the door, and there's no floor or ceiling or walls, and you're just like, brain, why are you showing this to me?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, maybe that's how your brain is structured in its own way. It's an inside
Yeah,
look as to
yeah, it could
what you
be.
are. I mean, do you dream in color, or do you ever smell things? Do you ever
Ooh,
can
these
you
are fun
actually like feel
questions.
things in your dream?
But yeah, these are good questions. I'm a visual person. I only remember sight, and it's a little frustrating for me. Um, it's frustrating musically, especially, um, but also like for business. Sometimes it frustrates me. I can only remember what people say if I write it down so that I can see the words. And as a kid, I remember not believing that. I didn't have that realization until college. So I thought, if I heard someone say something, I'd remember. And then I'd be like, oh, why don't I remember everything? Oh, that's okay. I just don't have perfect memory, right? Like excuses. But now that I know myself pretty well, it's like, oh, wow, if I write it down, I mean, I have pretty perfect memory. I actually have a pretty crazy skill called synesthesia
Yeah.
where I can see sounds. So, if somebody's playing a piano nearby, or if they're talking to me and I replay that scenario in my head, I see the sounds as colors, and it looks kind of like gas coming out of their mouth or wherever is the source of the sounds. Even cars, like everything for me produces color, and it's not the brightest color. Like I don't have the the most severe case. I mean, some people would say it's a bad thing of synesthesia, but it's definitely there. And so, you ask me, what do I feel? What do I sense in my memories and in my dreams? And the truth is that all I do is see.
Hmm.
I can't hear anything. I don't feel anything. I don't smell anything. But I see, and I see the most beautiful colors
Hmm.
that you wouldn't see in real life.
So would you say that people's voices also generate a color?
Yeah,
Really?
definitely. It's such a weird experience for me though because I don't see it necessarily in real time.
Hmm.
It's more of like a memory thing. So like you just said, when you hear voices, do you see color? The way that I saw that just now is I went back in my head. I could see like your lips moving, and I saw like a color like purple kind of over your
Hmm.
face. It makes it really hard to remember what people say. So I usually have to like lip read in my memory. But the cool thing about it though is, I mean, I have basically perfect ability to know if I heard something before or not,
Yeah.
right? Like I can hear a song, like you can play a song and then you can play it a second time, and I can point out all the things that were different about it.
Hmm.
My ability to see differences in sound is really really strong. My ability to like remember speeches and know that I like performed it exactly as I did on paper. That's really strong too. My ability to remember like numbers that I've only seen one time is like crazy strong.
Yeah.
So it's got its perks. But I'm curious. I mean, how is your memory formed and your dreams?
Let me see. I'm very active in my dreams.
Hmm.
So I can feel things. I can let me see, smell. I think I can smell every once in a while, but it's not like the strongest sense, but I can feel things. I see things in color. I am active in my dreams. And so there are times when I'm very uh, cognizant of what it is that I'm doing. So lucid dreaming, like I'll definitely know and I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna change all this up and do that. But a lot of times I'm just like an active player in my dream. So I'm not
Mm.
observing. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm in this scenario and then I'm acting this out and I have conversations with people and I can do a bunch of different things. I have I've experienced a bunch of different things. It's really cool. Um but I think I mean, dreams is just very fascinating. And the fact that you even said that you had synesthesia, that was a paper that I wrote in, well, it was post college, but I was taking some extra classes at Penn when I was working there. And one of the courses was to write on a paper. And so I wrote on synesthesia and I got a book actually on music and synesthesia. And it's just different individuals
Mhm.
talking about their experiences with it. So maybe that's something I can share with you if you're interested to hear other people's perspectives on it.
Yeah, no, I'd love that.
Yeah.
I've read some papers about it, and one of the things that I thought was really cool about what I read was that people seem to like see the same colors for the same like frequencies of sound. So there seems to be some relationship there between the frequency of the sound and what the person sees.
Yeah.
Um, so at least it feels like I'm not crazy.
Yeah. No, you're not. I mean, it was a few weeks ago that I started looking at the
Like the note A for me is always red.
oh, interesting.
I don't know why. And E is always green.
Huh.
So I like if I play the piano, I can like see the notes. I can hear a song and I can usually like play it pretty perfectly because I remember the order of the colors that I saw, and then I play the note until I see the right color.
Yeah. So one of the things I was looking at a few
I'd love to read your
oh
paper.
my gosh, I don't know where it is. But I mean, with that, I was looking at different frequencies with sound, heart frequency.
Mhm.
I was wondering if that had an affiliated color or some type of connection to sound and this and that. And so I think that would be really interesting to get into is seeing like sound
Yeah,
and then even just how the individual's heart frequency, like, is that something that we could eventually tap into and then find complementary ways to balance or, just
mm,
calm down those
like as a therapy
frequencies.
in a
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I study is perception. And my neurodiagnostic works by looking at how people's perception has changed, mostly visually, right? Because I show pictures to people. Look at all these parallels. I mean, geez. So, like, I totally agree with you. I think that it's very likely that the colors we see in our world, right? Like what color shirt you're wearing, et cetera, what color are the leaves? I think that there's a level of subjectivity to that. And I think that you can tune it to have a healthier brain. One of the things that always sort of surprised me in high school and college was, I did read a bit about depression, and they always said that the world seems black and white.
mm,
I wonder how much of that could be based on internal monologues, distracting people from their environment, and then the neurons of the brain training themselves on internal stimuli versus external stimuli, and basically having them hallucinate in a small way, more severely than others. And maybe they can see some colors better than others, and maybe there's a form of color therapy that can effectively treat dementia. Sorry, depression. Maybe dementia too, but I think that might be a bit more
mm,
complex. But I've always thought of that, like a sort of color wheel to treat depression.
yeah.
It sounds a little corny, but if you figure out what color the person needs more exposure of,
Yeah. I mean, why not? A lot of it is just exposure to the outside world. And it's just like, okay, if you're visually
yeah,
seeing
and taking
all
you
these
out of the
things,
inside,
yeah,
like,
get out of
oh,
that.
I hate myself or whatever it is that's in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of different ways that we could potentially treat people with a lot of these illnesses or diseases, but it's just, again, thinking outside the box. Even if something is pseudoscience or even if something isn't proven, like you and I both know that it
Mhm.
takes time to conduct research to get a validated answer for something. And not all research is going to be sponsored or funded on things. Uh,
Yeah, it's very frustrating for me.
um,
I'm setting records in terms of how quickly I can get a medical device to market.
Mm. Like personal
Um,
records or
you know,
like
like
business records?
like I'm pretty sure business records.
Nice.
Like I went from hiring my first employee to being live in clinics in 10 months.
Yeah, that's really fast.
Actually, technically 9 months. So like that's got to be a record, and it's FDA registered. Like this is an FDA medical device. I don't know anyone who's gotten an FDA regulated product to market in less than a year. Um, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, yeah, it is very hard. It's very hard to do. It feels like a game, and it feels like it has rules that you can learn. Um, but yeah, it's tough because you have to build the right evidence at the right stage, and it's promising to me because it means that if you learn that rule, like that playbook, then you can copy it and do it multiple times and succeed, multiple times. Um, but you have all these lessons to learn in order to figure out what that playbook looks like. So my first experience through this was pretty rough, and I still think that there are more lessons for me to learn even now. But I've also learned that you don't necessarily need to do everything perfectly, with a beautiful 2 million, 10 million clinical study. You can be more iterative, right? You're climbing a mountain. This is a hard problem. You can break it into small steps and take small steps bit by bit. You can start with a trial, a study with just your friends, 5, 10 people, test it out. If it works, now you have preliminary results. You can use that to negotiate with a professor at a university who has a funded study and see if they want to like try your experiment in their study, as long as it doesn't cost them much. And then go from there. Like you can always build step by step. And I think that's why it's important to, climb our mountains. The obstacle is the way, because if you break an obstacle into small steps, it is achievable.
Yeah. No, and that's really great. I mean,
I hope that's motivating for somebody. I don't know why I had the instinct to share
oh,
that.
I'm sure it is. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
At least I'm learning a lot. But what would you say is your next maybe passion project, or what's like the next thing that you just want to do for fun?
Um, yeah. It looks like I'm thinking, but I have thought about this a lot. I'm just deciding which answer I want to give. Um, the thing that gets me really excited right now, just as a human, and not business related at all, is I want to go back into ice sculpting. I really miss it. I miss the how fast it is in terms of how quickly it is to make a sculpture and how quickly it melts. Um, it's such a painful and beautiful experience at the same time. Um, I really miss it. Like I don't want my ice sculpting days to be behind me. I really enjoyed that hobby, and part of what makes it so fun and beautiful is that each time you don't even know what you're going to make going into it, really. So I love that creative aspect of it. I love how creative I can get with that type of project. And you don't even know how it's going to look as it's melting. I mean, I've had sculptures that have become more beautiful as they melt, and that's not something you expect, right? As an artist, if you're a painter, you're creating your painting, and then at some point you say, okay, it's done. One of the things I love about ice sculpting is nature tells you when it's done, and you get to sort of watch it, and it becomes different day by day. That's a common one. People think ice sculptures melt in like a day. Actually, it takes like a week. So you do get like some good viewing time. But yeah, I mean, I really want to get back to that. One thing that makes me really happy that I also want to get back to, but it doesn't really feel like getting back to it so much as just continuing to do, is dance. I really like dance and ceviche. I like making ceviche.
Oh, yeah.
So these are just like two other superhuman things that I want to do every day. In my dream life, I'm making ceviche and dancing every day. And part of me tells me, because that's my dream life, I should just be doing it
Yeah.
now. But another part of me says, I'm bringing a medical device to market, and I have like a to-do list that's, way too long. And I don't know. Finding balance is hard. You asked me that question earlier. Finding balance is hard.
Yeah. Well, you do need to eat, so you can always dance while you're
Yeah, yeah,
cooking,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
I do need to eat. I would argue that for health reasons, you need to move, right? You need to dance.
Exactly. So you can do both. You can combine these, different efforts and maybe just fit it
Yeah,
in
yeah,
at
yeah.
least once
Ice
a week.
sculpting, maybe I don't.
And
Yeah,
winter's coming,
yeah. I mean,
so
yeah.
you can get into ice
I
sculpting.
want to spend more time with my family too. My sisters, my parents.
Yeah.
Um, I've been very good at that though. Like I probably, nothing beats being a kid and being at home in terms of time with your family. But as an adult who is living in a different place than my parents and sisters, we're all living in different places.
Mhm.
I've really made a good effort this year to spend quality time with everybody one on one, visiting them, being there in person, and I'm proud of that. That's made me feel very, very fulfilled this year.
Mm.
You know, especially being able to be in person for someone's birthday. I mean, those are the best.
Mhm. Do you think that that's something that you've had to sacrifice before when you were building up your businesses?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've definitely had to sacrifice that.
Mm.
Uh, maybe that makes me like a cruel person. I don't know. Um, I've missed some birthdays of my parents and sisters. Um, in the future, I don't want to miss any, but I've definitely missed some. In general, I'm pretty good though. At seeing my family like on their respective birthdays. But it's also been easier in the past. When you're living together as kids, it's easy. I went to college with one of my sisters, so seeing her was easy. For a while, we all lived in Boston after college. That was probably one of the most fun parts of my life, being able to walk down the street and hang out with my sisters.
Yeah.
And so, starting basically 2 years ago, right, with COVID, that's when I stopped seeing my family quite as much in person. And honestly, now I'm traveling a bit more. So I'm finding myself having to make more of an effort to keep those priorities in my top five, right?
Yeah.
So it's worth it. But yeah, it's really funny to observe that if you really don't know what matters to you, it's so easy to let it slip and out of your top five, and then let it slip out of your life.
Yeah. And what would you say is your top one? If you wanna share it, you don't have to share it, but
Yeah, I'm always thinking about this too, because if I change my mind, I want to know as soon as possible. For me, my top one really feels like my family.
Mhm.
And I know that's probably a little corny, but, they're the people I know the best.
Mhm.
And they have always been there for me. So, my sisters and my parents, spending quality time with them is my number one priority.
Yeah. That's nice because it seems like they're going to be there to support you. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that you need a good support network, whether that's family or friends, but that's going to get you through a lot of the hard times or moments when you feel like you're alone. It's like, well, you're never alone. You always have somebody, regardless of the distance. There's somebody out there who
Yeah.
still has you in their thoughts and in their heart. And
Yeah. And also, not to like um, belittle your comment, but I think that there's like another aspect to it that's a little less selfish, right? Like it's not just they have your back. I think that like imagine being them, right? Like if and now I'm going to go philosophical, right? If there is a version of reality where my consciousness is experiencing your life, right? And so I'm you, and I'm living that. The people who I can affect the most are the people who are in my family, right? So my sisters, it's so easy to imagine life if I was in their shoes and they were in mine, and how I would want to be treated, and how I would want to treat that person. It's so easy to make a big impact. I think that's the key there. Um, of course, it's mutual, right? Like they always have your back, but also, you always have theirs. And passion, love, support, in a way, these are like bank accounts that are infinite, unlike time. You get to choose your level of patience and tolerance and love, and it can be infinite.
Yeah. And so, is there anything that you would want to share with our listeners as we're wrapping up to help guide them or motivate them? I mean, the whole talk has been like, motivating and all of that, but is there any last pieces of advice or words of wisdom that you would like to share?
Well, there's a book called The Surrender Experiment that I read, um, I think mid-pandemic, that I really liked. And what's so crazy is how unavoidable that situation is. So the surrender experiment is about this person who is not living a life that they like, and they decide to make crazy decisions that they don't even understand why they would make. For example, dropping out of school, buying a farm, living on the farm. And this is somebody who's never farmed before. They don't want to have horses. Like there's no natural draw to it. The only reason that they did it is they just said, you know what, I don't like this, so I'm going to quit. And then they got in their car, they drove around, and they drove into like down this road into a forest. They looked to the right and they saw like a little creek surrounded by trees, and they were like, this is pretty. And then they bought the land. Like it's such minutia. And it's a really powerful book because this person ends up accomplishing quite a lot and building a really beautiful life around themselves. And I mean, it almost seems like fiction because of the life this person starts to create. I mean, it becomes pretty insane. And I see that in my own life too, and I see that in other people's lives, that we are really just experiencing these chains of coincidence, and that's it. You can't in life set your sight on a target and just go, right? I don't believe that you should say to yourself, I'm going to be a doctor, and that's what I'm going to do, and everything I'm going to do is aligned to that. I think what's more important is finding your values, right? And then letting life guide you. And I think that if you truly want to be a doctor, probably that's a downstream effect of your values, right? Probably you want to be a doctor because of the values you relate with. And the sooner you realize that, and the sooner you follow those values, the faster you're actually going to reach your goals, right? Because people are going to see those values. And most importantly, you will have opportunities in your life that you can't connect to that dream, right? But that are connected. And you might not see it, but they're connected. And you'd be surprised how important that connection can be for you. I mean, like Denise, you and I are friends, and we're friends just out of being friends. But being friends with you has been an incredibly rewarding and enjoyable experience. You've connected me with people who I've worked with. We built a charity together. I mean, these are some pretty significant activities that I never expected, and I don't think you expected either. Um, and I think that it's only because of values that they come together like this. My very first investor for my business is he was part of our charity, and it's not all about business, right? But the reason I'm going to business examples is because it's just so easy to see. It's so black and white that if you're honest with who you are and you carry yourself that way in the world, showing people who you are and living truthfully with who you are, the universe manifests itself around you. The more easy it is for people to see who you are, the easier it is for the universe to basically provide you with the right opportunities. the right challenges, you can only see this. Okay, I'm going to share a little bit more knowledge. You can only see about 10% of what your vision includes. Like, you have peripheral vision, but you're actually not seeing it. It's mostly imaginary. It's black and white technically, and then your brain like artificially injects the colors, and it's a complex science, but you can only really see like 10%. And that's why we have things like optical illusions. They exist because we are partially blind. And all that I'm saying about that is you can only see things from your perspective. So when you're evaluating a decision, don't think just about how that decision impacts you, because you won't see how others see it.
Yeah.
Right? You've probably read plenty of books where there's a wise old person who identifies a young, talented individual for their humility, and their acts of kindness, and then decides, I'm going to help this person. Right? That is so incredibly important, and that is the truth of how society works. We're all observing each other and deciding who we want to help. Money is just an expression of help, and that's it. If you don't show people who you are and how you want to help others, it's going to be hard to motivate them to help you.
Yeah.
Especially if you have to like now work to motivate people versus, hey, I really like this person. I like what they care about. I would love to be part of this.
Yeah. And it's true.
So it's a very personal thing, right? Like, I ask myself what motivates me and what gets me to do things. And, that's, I act that way, right?
Yeah. And again, it kind of goes back to that point of like money isn't everything. So people who are stuck thinking, well, I can only really give back if I have money and I can donate and this and that. It's like, no, there's other ways that you can donate. And, donating your time, just
Yeah.
listening, just being kind to another person. Like, that is a form of expression of giving back to somebody, whether you realize it or not, you know?
And it's more fundamental. It really is. It really is. I think, yes, money's black and white, but it's also, it's fictional. Money is an expression of trust. And that's it. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the scientific description of money.
The expression of
Right?
trust.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? It's a promise that this has value. And you, when you receive it, you promise to recognize the value. That's it. That's all that it is. And if you've ever been in a position of hiring somebody, everybody's been in a position of buying stuff. How do you buy something? It's trust. Oh, I buy these sneakers because I trust the brand. I buy this food because I trust how it tastes. That taste, my taste buds love it. I trust that it's going to taste that way. It's all trust, and friendships are trust. And personally, I really think friendships are the most valuable thing in the world. You can't 3D print a human. When I was making those video games as a kid, they never were as fun as playing with my sisters. AI will not replace humans.
Yeah. Seems like they're trying to, but I agree with you. They won't.
They're always going to be a knockoff. They're always going to be inferior. They'll be better at us than certain things.
Yeah, for sure.
But they won't be alive. And so our interactions with them are going to be very canned. If you're looking for a unique life, a unique experience, you just can't get that from AI, because AI inherently is pattern driven based on previous data. I don't believe AI is capable of truly original thought, at least not how it's currently implemented. You can combine things in new ways, but the individual ideas fundamentally can't be unique. They all have to be observed through a camera. Now, what's interesting about that is humans. Could we be that way? Like, possibly. The first cavemen to invent fire probably saw lightning bolts hit trees, figured out how to save the charcoal and the embers to make new fires. So, are humans different from AIs? I don't know, but at a fundamental level, there are definitely things about consciousness that I don't understand, and I believe that humans have something that the AIs don't. So that's maybe part of faith, but it's what I believe in. I think that we've been around for a lot longer, living as creative, idea-seeking things, and AI at the moment is, you know, millions of years behind us and our ability to be creative.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to tap into yourself to figure out who you are and what kind of
Yeah, I mean,
creativity
look,
you have.
AI can't figure out what it likes. It can only be told what to like,
Yeah.
which means that it can't change its
Yeah.
mind. I think that's what's beautiful about humans. It's we're transitory, you know?
Mhm.
I like ice sculpting. Of course I would say that. But, we're beautiful in how we change
Mhm.
as people.
Yeah, and you can always change. That's the thing. You can always change. You have that power
Yeah.
to do it.
I know, and that puts my philosophy in check a lot because, are humans conscious or unconscious? And it's so hard. A lot of neuroscientists, will write papers and stuff about how the brain is all like chemically driven and therefore, not consciously controlled necessarily. Um, but we do have this ability to change something, and I still don't really know what it is, what it like, how we change our mind. It's a fascinating thing for me. I don't know how we do it. The way that I travel
Mhm.
between versions of reality is by imagining what I want and then taking those steps backwards. And what I would call that is priming. I'm preparing my brain for those situations because since we are emotional beings, often we act and then we think about things later and like, oh, I should have done something different. Well, if you think about it first, oh, I should have done something different in your imagination. Well, okay, great. Now you get to do the perfect thing.
Mhm.
So for me, that's how I control what reality I'm in. But is that control or destiny? It's hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're thinking about it before you actually do it. Some people think like
Yeah, but maybe I don't have a choice. Maybe that's how my brain works.
that's your destiny.
That's what I'm saying, though,
Yeah,
right? Like maybe it's
that's
unavoidable.
interesting.
But, there are moments where it's like I'm tired, I'm lying on the couch, I just want to nap and not work. And I motivate myself to get to work. And I wonder, like, did I really change my future right there? Uh, was it inevitable that I would get up, or is there another universe where I would just stay there and sleep? Probably. Do I really have the ability to change which universe I'm in, or am I just in the one where I'm always getting up? I don't know. One thing I'll tell you is very early on, I learned the word hard, it doesn't mean anything. You know, a second is a second. You might have different probabilities, right? Like taking a test, or you might have different levels of investment, like studying a material and knowing it. Um, you could say investing in a friendship, right? I like to think about that. But to say that something's hard doesn't actually describe it because it's just a second. It's just an emotion that you're feeling. It's just an activity that you're doing. Um, I don't think there's a reason to get frustrated with ourselves. So, calling something hard, I think just creates frustration. There's no need to do it. And I don't think it describes anything real. I think it's just emotional.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that. So you asked me for some final words.
Well, I mean
It's towards the end of the day over here. It's like 4 p.m. in Pacific. I've been up since 6.
No, I mean, like, I think that that wraps it up pretty nicely because a lot of people, when they try new things, they experience those challenges and they're like, "This is hard. I don't know if I can do it." And they start questioning whether that's the right thing for them to do. And it's like, no, just keep going. It's that mountain that we talked about
Yeah.
earlier. Just keep going and start to change the words that you start using and being like, okay, this isn't like hard for me, or, this is just something I have to work on. This is just something I have to improve because this skill hasn't been developed.
Oh,
It's
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 so cool
just
when you get into it.
yeah.
It's so cool when you get into the power of
Mhm.
words. Hypnotherapy is a real thing. I used to think, oh, it's pseudoscience. No, it's not. You can study how colors affect humans' emotions, right? You can study how the color red makes people more angry, the color blue makes people more calm. It's the same thing with the connotations of words, When people hear the word must, should, right? Those two words, they think of their parents telling them what to do. It's unconscious, right? Like, when do you hear those words? It's when someone's telling you to do something. Removing those words from your vocabulary will change your life and how you feel about things. When you tell yourself, oh, I should go do that, it naturally creates a subconscious argument against it in your brain because that's how you grew up. So if you tell yourself, "Oh, I should go to the gym," now you're gonna have a little word in a little speech bubble in your mind saying like, "Here are the reasons not to," versus you can always say like, "Time to be healthy. I'm going to the gym."
Mhm.
Boom. Now you've eliminated the possibility of that argument, and so yeah, that's a powerful thing. And yeah, the word hard. It's an example of a word that when you hear it, how do you feel? Negative, right? When does hard mean something good? When does hard make you happy? I mean, maybe
I'm
there's some
sure
like
there's some
edge
scenarios you
cases.
could come up with that, but
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's connotations and stuff, but like when I think of like difficult, then
Mhm.
right as a word, that's just always a word that's going to make me feel somewhat negative. It just has to. It has to affect me emotionally in a way that makes me lower a little bit my energy. I don't want something to be difficult. And so that changes how you think about something. Yeah. Um, oh, this person is difficult. By saying that, I've now cast a spell in a way because in my mind, I now have like a little bit more negativity towards this person. And now every experience that I have with them, that word is going to come back up, difficult. So, these are just some like other examples. I never, when I was learning to play the piano, I never told myself this was hard, this was difficult, any of those words because it would slow down my learning.
Mhm.
What I told myself is, oh, I'm getting better, plain and simple.
Mhm.
Oh, I can do this thing now that I couldn't do before. Cool.
Yeah. The power of words. That's truly amazing. So, James, I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time. This was really great and enlightening to hear, all of the different things that go on in your mind. And I thought it was really cool to learn that you have synesthesia. Like, that's always something I've like secretly geeked out on and wanted to connect with somebody who had that. So, we'll have to do that at another time and like just dive in deep and see how. I don't know. I just want to learn more about that, but we can do that another
Yeah,
time.
we will. We
Yeah.
will. Once again, it's not like the most severe, but it's definitely been a weird experience for me.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
That's
Well,
cool.
Denise, thank you so much for having me on your show. I love what we talked about today, and I hope that people walk away from this feeling like they at least learned something and that something is going to improve their life.
Yeah, I think it will, honestly. And if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'm always accessible via email. Email is my favorite. It's just james at vistimlabs.com, VISTIM labs, LABS.com. And yeah, I'll do my best to respond pretty quickly.
All right, that sounds good. And I'll have all that information in the bio as well. So you'll be able to just copy and paste it. So,
Sweet.
yeah. So, thank you again, James, for joining me and for spending a lot of this time just explaining, your viewpoint in the world and just really providing a lot of solid advice for people who can hopefully take those steps to embrace their reality and create a new reality for themselves. And to our audience, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoy it and have a great day or night or morning, whatever time of day it is for you.
Yeah, or timeless movement.
Yeah, I know. In the infinity. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody.